All right, and we are back here on the GSMC Football Podcast. And for the second part of the show, we're going to talk about another pair of wide receivers, or some other wide receivers, in CeeDee Lamb and Justin Jefferson. So these two guys are obviously some of the top wide receivers in the NFL. Justin Jefferson, most people look at him as the best wide receiver in the NFL. CeeDee Lamb is right up there as well with the best. And both of these guys are going to be looking for new contracts as well. Now, they both skipped out on voluntary workouts on Monday. And yeah, is this a big deal? Is it not a big deal? I mean, again, voluntary workouts, not really that big of a deal, but it's something to talk about. So I've talked about CeeDee Lamb, I've talked about Justin Jefferson, and we'll go through it again. But yeah, CeeDee Lamb, he's going to be playing, unless he gets a new contract beforehand, he'll be playing on his fifth-year option, which is about $18 million in 2024, and there hasn't been much progress on a long-term deal between him and the Cowboys. He's coming off of his best season, 135 receptions, 1,749 yards receiving, and 12 touchdowns. Justin Jefferson, he's got a base salary of $19.743 million in 2024, and the Vikings, they have exercised his fifth-year option in 2023. He's also skipping voluntary workouts, but attended the team's mandatory minicamp. So this is this is from 2023. He also skipped voluntary workouts last year, but he attended mandatory minicamp. So despite nearly reaching an agreement before the 2023 season, a long-term deal for Jefferson did not materialize. However, the Vikings general manager stated at the scouting combine that Jefferson should be compensated as the best receiver in the league, and I agree with that 100%. But now, the other thing with what I was reading is now with DeVonta Smith's new contract, does that put pressure on the Vikings and the Cowboys to finalize long-term deals with their receivers? Now, I don't think it necessarily does, but when you see other guys getting paid, your guys might be like, hey, well, where's my contract? So, yeah, with this, though, it's not that big of a deal. Like I said, Jefferson did this last year. CeeDee Lamb said, I'll be in Dallas. But it's going to be interesting how these situations unfold. Because if you think about it, both of these situations, you could end up having question marks at quarterback. Because with the Vikings right now, you have Sam Darnold as your quarterback, and yeah, they're most likely going to draft a quarterback. But right now, it's a question mark. And then on the other side with the Cowboys, well, what's going to happen with Dak Prescott? Is he coming back? Is he not coming back? This is something that we actually talked about in our production meeting. But, if Dak Prescott ends up walking as a free agent, the Cowboys take a huge hit with their cap space. Now, I was kind of confused by that because I didn't realize Dak Prescott's contract situation. That, the Cowboys have void years. So they kind of moved some money around. And if Dak Prescott ends up leaving, the Cowboys are still going to take a cap hit, which I did not realize that because, I'm thinking, well, if you're a free agent, that's it. You're off the books. But not necessarily. Because the Cowboys added those void years. So technically he's under contract till I think it was 2026 with what I was reading because I was curious. But, yeah, so the discussion was, well, if now that you know this new information, or this information that's already been out there, but I didn't realize it, should the Cowboys still, pay Dak? And here's the thing. I didn't say it at the time, but that shouldn't change your decision on whether you should keep Dak or not. If you don't want to keep the guy, then you let him go. If you don't want to pay him all that money. Now, I think I saw that if they do sign him, then they actually save some cap space. So, yeah, that's another thing that kind of favors them re-signing him. But look at what the Broncos did with Russell Wilson. They cut ties with him. They're like, even with the cap hit that they're going to take, they're like, we don't want you here. We're parting ways. So now I don't think it's going to be. It's a little bit of a different situation, but still, Broncos are taking a huge cap hit from someone that's not even on their team next year. The Cowboys might do the same thing and just let Dak go and take the cap hit. But that remains to be seen. But I did think that was interesting because I did not realize that the void years that were tacked on to Dak's contract. So we'll see. But it just doesn't seem like a deal with Dak Prescott and the Cowboys is progressing. It seems like no movement. There's been no movement. And I know we've seen how some headlines that they're comfortable with letting him play out his contract the final year, at least in 2024, letting him play it out in 2024, and then we'll see what happens after that. But who knows? He could be blindsided and a new deal is agreed upon. But it will be interesting if a deal gets done there. But again, with the Cowboys and the Vikings, yeah, you could have question marks at quarterback. And did see some headlines that maybe the Cowboys do draft a quarterback in this year's draft. Now, again, it's not going to be someone that's, in the top 10, but they could take someone in the later rounds. And, you go back to 2016, Tony Romo was the starter. But they did draft Dak Prescott in, I think it was the 4th round. So, and look what Dak Prescott turned out to be. Now, again, it's not like he turned out to be, the best quarterback in the NFL, but he's been good. He's been good, I would say. I mean, again, not great, but I think it's not like, the Cowboys have been this terrible team for years. It's just, he's a good enough quarterback that gets you to the playoffs. That's why I'm saying he's good. I think he's good. I don't think he's great. But he's a quarterback that gets you to the playoffs. Maybe he wins you a playoff game, and that's it. And he's only won 2 playoff games. And the first year they made the playoffs with him, that was Zeke's team. I think I've said this before. I think Dak is a better quarterback now than he was back then when they went 13-3. When he won Offensive Rookie of the Year. And the Cowboys have not gone any further. And the team's changed. Zeke's no longer there, although he could be coming back. Still got to wait on that and see if that ends up happening. You had Dez Bryant leaving. Now you got CeeDee Lamb, Amari Cooper. Well, now Amari Cooper's gone too. But, there's been a lot of changes. But now this offense has become more of Dak's team. Well, now it is Dak's team. And they're throwing the ball a lot more. You want to see them address the running back position. And we'll see what they end up doing in the draft, because that's probably what they're going to end up doing if they don't, sign a veteran. But this is Dak's team. And we'll see if they end up keeping him around, or if, they draft a quarterback and they move off him. Because, again, you still have Trey Lance on the roster, too. So, I'll have to keep an eye on that. But with CeeDee Lamb, we'll see what they end up doing. Because another thing we talked about in the production meeting, too, someone brought up, is CeeDee Lamb expendable? Because the Cowboys, they do a good job at drafting. So, you can maybe go into this draft where there's plenty of wide receivers, and maybe you draft somebody, in the late first round, maybe in the later rounds, that maybe could become that next CeeDee Lamb. Not saying that's going to happen, but the Cowboys do a good job at drafting. They drafted CeeDee Lamb. They drafted Micah Parsons. They drafted good wide receivers in the past. You got Dez Bryant. You go back even further, Michael Irving as well. So, you trade CeeDee Lamb, you get a lot of picks back. Maybe you find the next CeeDee Lamb doing that. I mean, look at what the Vikings did. They traded Stephon Diggs, and they used the pick that they got for Stephon Diggs and drafted Justin Jefferson. Cowboys could do that with CeeDee Lamb. Not saying they're going to, but it's possible. But I guess that was a good point that was brought up. But again, I'm still gonna stay on my opinion that even with the void years, it seems like Dak could be the odd man out. It seems like he could. And if that's the case, then they're going to be looking for a new quarterback. But let's not pretend that, the Cowboys, you lose a quarterback that they're done. Because, again, you lost Romo in spring training. Got baseball on the mind, sorry. You lost Romo in preseason, and then Dak steps in and is the quarterback, and Cowboys won 13 games. Now, again, you could look at, they had the best offensive line in the NFL. You had prime Zeke. Okay. I agree. But Dak also won Offensive Rookie of the Year. He could have easily just not played well, and Cowboys season would have been derailed. But no, that wasn't the case. The Cowboys, he was a part of the Cowboys winning 13 games that season. So, again, I'm not a big Dak guy, but I'll give him some credit. So, but now we'll see. I mean, the Cowboys don't have. I mean, that offensive line at the time was, one of the best. It's not like what it's going to be now, because they've lost a lot of guys since then. Travis Frederick retired, Tyron Smith now left. They still got Zach Martin. That's it. Everybody else that was on that line left or retired. But I mean, it's a quarterback, a rookie quarterback. If they had to step in and take over, I mean, look at what Cooper Rush did when Dak was hurt. Cooper Rush played well. So I'm not saying any quarterback can step into that situation and play well, but I'm just saying, like, if they moved off of Dak and, you pay CeeDee Lamb and, you pay Micah Parsons and you figure out how to rework the dead cap situation, if there's even an efficient way to do that. I mean, I think a quarterback stepping into that situation it's a good situation to step into, because you have a sure number one wide receiver in CeeDee Lamb. Not an offensive line that, it's not as good as it has been in years past, but got that. You got to figure out the running game now. You also got a good tight end as well. It's not the worst situation to step into. So, same thing with the Vikings. Sorry, it's kind of turned into a Cowboys segment, but same thing with the Vikings. I mean, whatever rookie quarterback that they end up taking, I mean, you the weapons that they have too. But again, got to remember that not every quarterback is going to play well in a great situation. But we'll see. We'll see what happens. But yeah, the Cowboys, we'll see what ends up happening past 2024 if Dak Prescott is still around, and we'll see what the Vikings what ends up happening, because I know, again, J.J. McCarthy's been that guy that has been trending up. So we'll see if the Vikings maybe are the team that ends up getting him, if they trade up again to get him. We'll find out. We will find out. But let me know what you guys think about Justin Jefferson and CeeDee Lamb skipping voluntary workouts. Is it a big deal? Is it not a big deal? It's not really a big deal, but you hope that these two guys eventually get their money. Otherwise, who knows what's going to happen? Maybe these are going to be the next two guys that could be on the move, end up being traded. But, I mean, I think for the Vikings, I think it's more important for them to get a deal done with Justin Jefferson than it is for CeeDee Lamb. And the Cowboys to get a deal done. But we'll see. We'll see what happens. So before I go to break again, just want to remind you guys again to tip or donate, get your comments recognized. Make sure to go to the following link. That is GSMCpodcast.net. Again, that really helps the show, makes the show more interactive between myself, the host, and you guys, the viewers. Again, that is GSMCpodcast.net. And as always, it is displayed on the ticker at the bottom of the show segment down below. So when we come back from our second break of the show, I will talk about a couple of Las Vegas Raiders. We'll talk about Davante Adams committing to the team as well as Max Crosby eyeing a strong season in 2024. So, with that being said, stick around and we'll be right back here on the GSMC Football Podcast.